10 years. But I went up there this fall with a friend of mine, and very nice.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you.
Thank
It's nice
you.
to see you.
Same. Did you have a nice holiday?
It was very nice. How about you?
Good.
Did you have everybody over?
No, I was in Plainfield.
How were you?
Mark invited me, he and his family, and celebrated. We had a celebration with my cousin, who was like a sister to me, and she was born 10 years on that day. And we just reminisced.
That's good.
And we played games. And
That's what this holiday is about, is family. Yeah.
it is.
So,
It just
it's good.
is, and it's sad when people don't know.
It is.
You look good, Doug.
Thank you very much. I feel really good.
Did you get any signs of COVID?
Sometimes my taste and my hair, my smell go away, but they come right back, it seems like.
At mine, it's a
Yeah.
little bit different.
Well, do you?
It's annoying, everybody.
Yeah. Everybody to drive out. Well, I gotta go.
Okay. We're going to start the committee of the whole meeting, please. Okay, good evening. It's 7:07 on Monday, November 27th, 2023. I'd like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting. Bridget, can we have a roll call for the committee meeting, please?
Trustee Ketchmark?
Here.
Trustee Cote?
Here.
Trustee Hendricks?
Here.
Trustee Nirmatsu?
Here.
Trustee Gahuli?
Here.
Trustee Kaluzny?
Here.
And President Gardy.
Here. Thank you, Bridget. The first item is a review and discussion of a resolution authorizing the adoption of the fiscal year 2024 annual budget of the village. As I know the board recalls, we had a very good, lengthy budget workshop meeting, very productive. That was the culmination of all the work of the department heads and staff bringing it forward, and there was a lot of good input that night and discussion, and Doug's here tonight to make probably basically a summary of what we talked about and a public public display of it, and then we would approve this at the first meeting in December, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Doug, the floor is yours.
So as President Garvey stated, this really is going to be a summary slideshow. I'm going to go through a condensed version, basically, of what we talked about at the budget workshop. And then I'll, if you have questions along the way, feel free to interrupt, or at the end, we can go through some additional questions. I did send out a draft copy within the packet. It's for the 2024 fiscal year. What we're going to be talking about is we're going to re-summarize the 2023 fiscal performance, go over the proposed 2024 budget, discuss the 24 general fund budget, and then review the other funds. So first thing we're going to talk about here is the fiscal year, our estimates for the end of the year 2023, which is coming up in about a month, December 31st. The revenue picture, we are actually going to be above our budget projections by about $650,000. The main reason for that, as we had discussed before, was a recognition of a fire truck grant and some ARPA monies. And then there were some revenue items that fell below budget, but that's really the majority of the increase of those two grants. The expenditures, we were slightly unfavorable. That had to do also with the fire truck grant, but there were a number of favorable variants that occurred through the year. Then we have our balance before the transfers, and we're in a favorable position of $535,000, which is good. We had budgeted $1.4 million surplus. We actually came in at $1.9 million. So that's what we're expecting to come in, I should say. Things change, but that's where we're planning on being at, knock on wood. Then following that are our net transfers. And what a transfer is, it's basically funding from one fund to another. Our general fund is the funding mechanism here for the most part. And then we're going to finish the year after that with after the transfers about $650,000. That's what we're expecting, versus what we had budgeted, which was $140,000, for a difference of about $500,000 to the good. So we're expecting to finish the year about $500,000 from where we had expected to be, and that's for the general fund. The transfers, as I had said, The general fund gets a transfer in from the motor fuel tax fund for $600,000. This has been a staple of our budget process. We do this every year to help fund the street improvement costs, the street maintenance costs. And so that's what the transfer in out of the MFT fund is. We get the approval from the IDOT to do that. We have the next three are the transfers out from the general fund. The general fund finances debt service for what they call alternate revenue source, meaning it's not a property tax levied for that debt. That's what that $200,000 is for. We transferred money out of the general fund to finalize our Candy Cane share, Candy Cane Park with the improvements. And then the other portion of it, the largest portion, is the $1.5 million transfer to the infrastructure fund to fund the 2023 road program. That gives us a balance of our net transfers of $1.3 million out. This next slide basically shows where we are. We've talked about ARPA. This really will be the last discussion I think we're going to have on ARPA. Next year, we'll pretty much be done with it. Just a summary, in 2022, we spent money basically on public safety. We spent it to cover excess overtime above and beyond what we had budgeted for overtime. And then and then we did fund our share of the Brookfield Avenue Bridge, and that's public infrastructure. This year, in 2023, we spent $488,000 of our ARPA funds to cover the village share of the new ladder truck. Then moving forward, I just know that a portion of this is going to be covered. $376,000 will cover the new ambulance purchase that's been budgeted for in 2024. And the remainder we'll probably use towards infrastructure having to do with our share of the Burlington Avenue Road program, which is a big program. The next slide. Again, this is an important slide. What it shows is that the village at one point in time in 2019, 2020 was just barely, if even, covering the expenditures with the revenues. The green line represents revenues. The red line represents expenses. And as you can see, for 2019 and 2020, the future was bleak. But then in 2020, 2021, and 2022, we had new revenue streams, a new village manager, and other items that helped, you're welcome, and other items that helped make the revenues increase. I mean, we really basically increased, as I said before, our income taxes and sales taxes combined by about $2 million annually. And a lot of that has to do with state legislation. They offered us a lot of breaks on that one. This is just the breakdown of the Brookfield Property Owners Tax Bill. It's for the 2022 levy, which is the one that was just being extended. It looks like it's about 16% of the dollar goes to the village, with another 5% or 5 cents out of a dollar going to the village debt service for the 2016 referendum road bonds. There's 3 issuances. The first one will fall off of the tax rolls in 2026. It started in 2016. It's a 10-year issue and it will come off in 2026. And then 2 years after that will be the second one from 2018, and then 2 years after that will be the third and final. Okay, we talk about now about the 2024 draft budget. What you're looking at here is a summary of all funds, general fund all the way down through the special assessment fund. The increase, well, the total budgeted funds for all funds is $63,931,887. That's an increase of almost $19 million over the previous year. The largest, if you look through there, the largest increases occurred in the infrastructure fund and in the water sewer fund, and there's a reason for that, and that has to do with 3 major infrastructure programs that we have and that we're looking at doing in 2024 and beyond. In the infrastructure fund, of course, that's the Burlington Avenue Road program. That's about a $5 million program overall. That will be funded through grants from both the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District as well as the, I guess it's the Council of Mayors, and then probably some contingency fund that's coming through the West Central Municipal Conference. If all goes well, the village will be on the hook for that whole program at about $900,000. Two meetings ago, we did authorize the spending of some money out of the MFT fund to cover anything over and above what we expect not to get for these bonds. So it could cost us up to $2 million, but I don't think that's going to happen. Derek feels that we will be getting that, it's called contingency funding to cover the difference, which would really bring our total cost out-of-pocket cash on that project to about $900,000. Because of that, we also reduced our annual road program. We did reduce it to about $1 million from a normal $3 million to make sure that we're even. So we're spending just about the same amount year to year on our infrastructure for the road program, if you consider the Burlington Avenue project a road program. Some of those costs, the sewer portion, will be covered in the water sewer fund. So that's the reason for the large increase in the infrastructure fund. And as we talked about in the water sewer fund, a portion of that will be accounted for. But the majority of the water sewer fund increase goes to the water main replacement program, which we've discussed, as well as the lead service line replacement program, which we're just starting to get into. The funding for those programs will come from the state of Illinois. That's what our anticipation is, the major funding. The major funding for that program will come through low interest or no interest loans for the lead service, as well as the water main replacement. We're in the process of getting the final financing down for that. We have to talk to the state to see where we're at. I got to actually talk to Derek and see what our situation is with that. As I was explaining to Trustee Cote, depending on how much funding we're able to get from the IEPA on this, that really drives the amount of the budget that we're going to be spending on this, because we only generate about $700,000 to $800,000 with the increase in the rates, and we can always do that on those programs. But if we expect to really move up on it or hype up the spending on that, we need the IEPA loans, and that will determine where we go next year and even into 2025 for the replacement and the lead service line programs. So that's why those jumped up so high.
So that we're clear, if we do not get the loans and the grants that we're expecting to get to cover this, the budget changes from 63 back down to 49.
Because we won't be spending that money on those projects.
That's correct.
Because we won't.
But it's not that we had 14 million that we're kicking out, that we're expecting to get that via grants and loans.
Right. And that's what this slide kind of goes through. It shows the infrastructure projects that we have and why our budget increased so high. It's mainly because of these three large projects. So, some other stuff I wanted to point out here. This will probably be in in later slides, but all of the TIF funds, except for the Congress Park TIF, have a property improvement program, as we have done in the previous 3 or 4 years. Tonight we had two PIPs go through, and this will hopefully continue as long as we continue to fund this. And my assumption is that we will continue to fund it, and there will be available funding to do that. This is a reassessment year, and usually in a reassessment year we get larger bumps in the incremental EAV, basically, and that's what drives the revenues within those TIF funds. So we should be able to continue the PIP program. The Congress Park TIF, they are going to do a sidewalk on the north side of that. We have an Invest in Cook County grant that's going to, we've already been approved for that, and that'll be partially covering the cost of that project. That'll be a sidewalk on the north side of the railroad station over there, somewhere. It goes in between by Sweetener Supply. The Ogden Avenue TIF, Energize Ogden, is the biggest project we have going on there right now. We have an engineering firm picked out who has been going through that area. I don't know if you've seen, but I've seen the surveyors were out there for quite a while surveying the road. The total cost that we're budgeting for 2024 in that fund is $700,000 for that engineering service. The village is only responsible for 20% of that. We get reimbursed 80% of that cost. So our actual cost on those engineering fees net will be about $140,000. And then the last one here is the Parks Project Fund. We are redoing Ellert Park. We got an OSLAD grant for $600,000. The total estimated project cost is estimated to be $1.2 million. It will be spread over a 2024 year and move into 2025 year. OSLAD, I guess it's the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, put an expenditure deadline of April of 2025. I did talk to them, and they said if it needs to be extended, it can be extended. Hopefully, it will not have to be extended. This is a summary view of our general fund. Our general fund, as I've said before, is the major fund of the village. It accounts for all the salaries. I shouldn't say all of them. It does account for the majority of village salaries. And it accounts for the majority of village revenues. So the net bottom line that we're looking at in the general fund is $680,000, which is very similar to what we expect to finish 2023 in. It shows that we're consistent in both the revenues and in the spending, meaning our difference between both of those is pretty much aligned with where it has been in the past, which is a good thing. It means we're not overspending our revenues at this point in time, but we're keeping in touch with what we need to spend that money on. As we discussed at the budget workshop, and you'll see later on, we're going and we're upgrading our vehicle fleet, we're upgrading our municipal facilities, things that we haven't been able to do a whole lot with in the past because we haven't had a lot of money to work with. So we're moving forward in that. So this is a draft, general fund draft budget. It shows really what I wanted to show here was our revenue changes. There's just the property tax overall budget is 10% increase. We actually only are levying an increase of 6.4%, but the debt levy is going down, which drives our 10% within the general fund down to 6.4% overall. We are limited in the general fund levies to the property tax extension limitation law, which would allow us to only increase that 5%. We go a little bit extra to cover expanded growth. We also are issuing, are levying an additional $150,000 for the Recreation Special Handicap Fund, and that's included in those numbers also. Income taxes, I'm anticipating a 6%. The number comes directly from IML. They base it on a per capita. You get a dollar value, and you multiply that by the percentage, and that's pretty much where that number comes from. It's a pretty straight math on that. And all the other ones are pretty normal. The highest one in there looks like building permits. We're allowing for certain larger projects to come through. That's why that one has increased so much. Fines and citations has increased mainly due to an anticipation that with the new structure of personnel in the police department, that will help drive up our fine revenue. Not that he wants to go out there and actually ticket people for money, but it's a necessary thing with the way the parking structure is in the village of Brookfield. Below that is a consolidated, go one more slide, that one there, that's a consolidated general fund draft budget. It shows where we expect to end of the year at $680,464. Go to the next page. Our transfers are similar to what they were in the past. It's a debt service transfer, it's an infrastructure road fund transfer, and the parks project transfer for this time isn't Candy Cane Park, of course, it's for Ellert Park. So that's what our total net transfers tie out to be $1.7 million out of the general fund. So this is the general fund revenues. This is an estimate for 2023 versus an estimate for 2020 or budget for 2024. It's a $1.25 million increase based on those numbers that we had seen before. These are just a breakdown of where we expect to see the largest increase, which is what we went through on a previous slide. Then we get the expenditures here that represent a 4% increase from the estimated 2023 to the 2024. That's a 4% increase in expenditures, driven mainly by salary and personal benefits. This graph shows basically how the expenditures within the general fund are broken apart by department. As you can see, public safety, police and fire take up probably that's about 60% of the funding, followed closely by general administrative and then public works and recreation. These are the list of new items. We can go through them real quickly. At least point out the important ones. We had talked about the dual band radios for the fire department, the necessity to maintain that technology. So that's in the budget. Village-wide video cameras at $120,000 is a portion of what the total project is. Some of it is being spent in 2023 with the remainder in 2024. I think you got to go back. Oh, I missed the slide, I'm sorry. I'm the one, I'm sorry. I was ahead of myself. So, information technology upgrades of 305,000, they have an IT committee, and there were a number of recommendations, and that's where the 305,000 came from. A new ambulance, that is what we're funding our ARPA, we're funding that ambulance with ARPA money. The construction lot, the construction of the parking lot on 31st Street, that's where the village acquired that land. The total vehicles that we're anticipating through enterprise fleet management, we're estimating 8, 9, 12 vehicles at a total lease cost of $180,000 during the year. And then Public Works would like to get 2 one-ton dump trucks at a cost of $300,000. Fire department, dual band radios, we went through that already. All right, so let's go to the construction of the new roll call room for the PD. They hope to have that completed in 2024 at a cost of $80,000. And then we have the creation of the new staff positions. So if you look at those costs, really the net cost compared to where we're at on today's picture to the new one is about $167,000. Mainly due to the fact that some of these costs are already included in the budget, except in a different form. So for instance, the business development specialist, we might be budgeting $90,000, but we have budgeted in the past for a consultant to do that work at the cost of $75,000. So really the net change for that position is a $15,000 increase in the budget. The communications manager, that is a totally new position, and that does add $75,000 to the budget. The community service officer was a part-time position, and now it's a full-time, so half of that is $32,000. And then the part-time building inspector position, that is a new position for $45,000. If you take those changes ultimately to the budget, new positions cost the budget and add an additional about $170,000. And then just the rest of the stuff here, replace the Village Hall generator. This is a project that we've been looking at for quite a while. Hopefully it will be done this year. And then the rest are smaller costs, the brush removal from South Kiwanis, and then to cost to perform multi-unit building inspections. And we go to the, this is a reserve picture. We present this to you every year. If you go to the next slide, well, we anticipate ending the year 2023 at a 23% reserve level and almost very closely reaching the 25% level in 2024. It's about a 24.7%, which to me is close enough to 25%, given the amount of time that we've just waited to get there. So we can say, I think, that by the end of 2024, we should be at that 25% reserve level. And then these are the other fund highlights. The TIFs, let's see, we're going to put some benches in the downtown in 8 corners. Then I talk again about the sidewalk project in the Congress Park TIF, and there's that engineering fee for Energize Ogden. Okay, so the hotel motel tax fund, we're going to throw $42,500 at a marketing program. It'll be different types of things. It will be participation at conferences and some other issues that we've been looking at and need to have done. So that's coming out of the hotel motel tax fund. That fund is specifically designed for tourism type activities, which is what this program is designated to do. In the infrastructure project fund, we've talked about the road program. In the Burlington Avenue Street project, those are the 2 mains one under there. And in the water sewer, we are continuing with the flood mitigation program at $300,000, which is where we've been at for the past 2 years. And prior to that, we used to do it for a $300,000 budget also. I think through last week or the week before, I think I saw for the flood mitigation, we were almost at $180,000, almost $200,000. So we're going to finish the year below budget on that line item. I don't know. Probably what will happen is if we do receive a large rain in 2024, we'll get more interest in the program. That's been kind of, it hasn't dwindled, but, and we do get constant or continual requests for reimbursements. But when the program was first introduced, we did spend that $300,000 like right away. And there was
If we get a big flood, you're in trouble for saying that.
I know, I'm sorry. And then we got fire hydrant painting. Some of it's already been done. Some will be carried over into 2024. We are planning on doing the water tower parking lot. And then there's your water main and lead service line replacement programs. And that's all there is on my slide presentation. I would like to answer any questions if you have any at this point in time.
Thank you very much for the presentation tonight and all the time that all the department heads and staff put into the planning of this and the budget workshop and the input of the board. You know, the budget reflects the priorities of the village and the board. I mean, this is how we speak about what our priorities are, and you could see where our priorities are. There's very heavy on infrastructure, public safety with the vehicle replacements, you know, the economic development, the positions in the Economic Development Department. These are the areas that we're moving forward. And, you know, I'm going to let the board speak in a moment, but, you know, I said this at the workshop a little bit. This is exciting for us, you know, especially those who've been around for a while, just to see that reserve policy. We're almost at that magic 25%. And, you know, it's hard to think about how far away from it we were when we started. We used to have to take, you know, loans at the end of the year to pay bills because the property tax receipts weren't in and we didn't have the money in reserves. And we're just about at that recommended 25% at the end of the year. So that it's taken a lot of foresight and discipline by staff and the board to reach that point, and has put us in that more comfortable position of having available funds for unexpected expenses and unexpected cash flow issues. Sometimes it's just the cash flow issue. Every once in a while, Cook County's late on something and they don't get tax bills out. And that, you know, most of our money comes from the tax receipts. And if they don't get the bills out on time and collections, in the past, it would have affected us more and caused us out-of-pocket expenses for interest. And the other thing it does is it helps us with our bond rating, which when we have to borrow money, our bond rating is improved because we have this reserve. It's been mentioned previously as a thing that I mentioned again at the workshop was, you know, very proud of how the board and staff dealt with these, gave us money and gave all the municipalities money. And I'm very proud of the fact that the board and staff chose to do with it what was supposed to be done with it. You know, we've invested in infrastructure and public safety. You know, there's other places that chose to do, you know, maybe the ones balance their budget. And I think the state of Illinois did that and has, you know, bragged about their balanced tax is something, you know, the local sales tax and the state sales tax. It's always been our desire to increase our sales tax base so there's less reliance on property tax. We're always going to need to rely on property tax. But as you see from that slide, which I think is a very helpful slide, and I know we posted on our website, how much of the tax bill actually goes to the Village of Brookfield versus the other taxing bodies, including the high school and grade school districts. We are using, you know, those funds to provide a lot of services, and it's exciting to see that we've kind of reached that point. So, any other questions or comments or input from the board?
Thank you very much, Doug, for all the work in the village, for all the work. And by the way, Doug, thank you for all the times of putting up with all my 20 million questions and cornering you in your office asking about questions on that. As President Garvey had pointed out, and as Tim has pointed out on many occasions when we're discussing the reserve funds and where we are, and you saw it on that graph of the percentage of the numbers, right, for going back to 2014. And as President Garvey pointed out, there were many times at the end of the year we were having to borrow money, et cetera. So this shows a direct correlation to the financial health of Brookfield. And the fact that we can do this and we can put away so much into our reserve funds and not have to stress about how we're going to compensate or make bills or make payroll, et cetera. The financial health of Brookfield has gotten better exponentially in the past 8-9 years, especially in the past 5-6 years that we've been here, that I've been here. The financial health is great. So thank you very much for the work that's being done and is going to be done. On some of the other larger ticket items that you had, some of the vehicles, some of those items were actually, we had budgeted last year, but they had to be carried over into this year. So I don't know if many people realize that. So some of the big price ticket items that we had already budgeted them, we had already prepared to get them, but for some reason or another, we were unable to acquire a certain vehicle, et cetera. So then that vehicle got pushed into the next year. But the funding is still there, so that funding just got moved into the next year. That's all I really had. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, thank you. So we will put the resolution for the budget approval, adoption of the fiscal year 2024 annual budget on the December 11th meeting. Thank you, Doug. Okay, the next item we have for discussion is a request to extend the custodial contract with Crystal Maintenance Plus Corporation for custodial services with the Village of Brookfield, including some additional services. We have a very detailed memo from Vincent Smith, our Public Works Director, but Vince, would you like to approach and kind of maybe summarize I know the board's familiar with what your request is, but maybe for the public?
Yeah, absolutely. So Crystal Maintenance Service currently provides custodial services for the Village Hall and the Public Works facilities. The village conducted a competitive bid process back in 2020 where Crystal Maintenance was awarded the bid. They were $21,264 lower than the next lowest bidder. And the price of that contract was $28,140. There currently are no more contract extensions with this current vendor, so we're asking to waive the competitive bid process. After discussions with Crystal Maintenance, they're willing to hold their pricing into 2024. They are currently providing adequate services. They are very responsive to any issues that the village brings up to them. And then staff would like to add additional locations, which would increase that pricing of the contract currently. The added locations would be Eller Park and Kiwanis Park restroom facilities, and those would be from in the months of March through October, and they would provide custodial services 3 days a week to those locations, and that would increase the contract price from $28,140 to $33,700. Adding those additional locations would help to alleviate some of the burden of public works that tends to those facilities 3 days a week, so we can perform more tasks in the field.
And on that point, are those 3 specific scheduled days that they will go, or is it, and timing, what are the hours that they would do that? I mean, because I know your staff spends a lot of time with the bathrooms, especially at some of the large events.
Yeah, correct. I apologize if I cut you off.
No.
So we'd, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday would be our days that we would ask them to perform those custodial services following the, all the ball games that take place at those facilities during the baseball season. So they would perform cleanup the Friday prior to the games taking place, and then on Monday after you've had all your games transpire, and then midweek on Wednesdays we would do it. And then we would have discussions with that custodial service on the timing of that.
So they would so when you say after the games, games go pretty late. So like on Mondays, they would be cleaning up the bathrooms at kind of the end of the day?
Correct. They would, during probably around 5 p.m. is when they typically are in performing custodial services within the village.
Because, I mean, at that point, out of personal experience at Eller Park, the high schools have games, high school at RB softball and baseballs over there, so those games will probably be ending at that point. But, I mean, games go on throughout the night, but
Till about 10:30 at night.
10:30 at night. But, I mean, I understand this is a supplemental in addition to what your employees do, which is to free them up for some of the other duties that they're needed. And just the whole history behind this, even with the Village Hall, for those who don't know, I mean, our Public Works employees used to try and clean the Village Hall, but it was challenging because they would try and do it during the day, during their normal shifts and normal hours when there's a lot of the employees here. It's just difficult to work and clean around the employees. So we worked it out where we put it out to bid, and the contractors, they come in. I think you see them here. If you come in at night or you see them here, they're here. When we're leaving tonight, they'll be here, and they clean the Village Hall, and they do a very good job. And again, it frees up the Public Works staff and not have to pay overtime for the Public Works members to come in at night after hours. That would have been cost prohibitive. So I think the initial idea of switching to this outside contractor. And when we put this out for bid previously, I think I recollect that Crystal Maintenance was by far the lowest bidder, a substantial amount below everybody else.
Yes, correct. They were $21,264 lower than the lowest bidder in 2020, and they're holding those 2020 rates.
So that's why you feel confident in recommending that we don't have to go back out to bid.
Yes,
I would,
correct.
I would just suggest that just coordinate their times with, I know that Parks and Rec Department. Luke will probably have the schedules from Little League and maybe from the high school just to coordinate, so you're not like shutting down a bathroom in the middle of a game, you know?
No, absolutely. They're receptive and flexible, so
Yeah.
we will work with them.
Sounds good.
Does that include the, who's responsible for the actual overhaul bathrooms? Does Little League clean those, or are we responsible for the actual overhaul bathrooms on the overhaul?
We do a maintenance check on those regularly.
But I'm pretty sure the Brookfield Little League volunteers just kind of, when they have games all day, they're just this,
Right. But I'm just wondering, does this quote, that was my only question, does this quote include that bathroom as well as the main bathroom in Kiwanis?
That would, they would be cleaning both bathrooms if we were to ask them to, yes,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Other questions or comments from the board? So basically, what we're looking at is a one-year extension with them holding the price and the additional expenditures for the additional shifts of cleaning the park facilities at Ellert and Kiwanis from March to October.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and the additional cost, is about $5,000 for that. So, good.
I think it's great. I mean, we have so many people from our own community, from so many surrounding communities coming for so many events that, like, let's show our best, right? Wherever we can, and I think
And it's just the point of freeing up our
Right.
public works skilled
Yeah.
workers to do
we
other
do other things.
the other things that they, need to stay on top of,
Yep.
so. All right, so we would need to put this contract extension up at we'll be ready for the December 11th meeting?
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right, Vince, thanks for bringing it forward, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item we have is a review and discussion of the strategic plan report provided by Northern Illinois University's Center for Governmental Studies. We have the draft plan and the executive summary. Tim, you going to present on this, or?
Real quick, and Stevie was the prime staff person working with them, but 3 years ago, we, the village board and staff and a gentleman by the name of Robert Oberweis met, and we did a strategic plan, creating and identifying the major and broad goals of the village organization was going to pursue over the next 3 years. We've reported on that periodically over the ensuing subsequent 3 years. And this year it was time to meet and reestablish goals. We did that. We secured the services of Northern Illinois University's Center for Governmental Studies, and they convened 2 sessions in May with the village board and staff, meeting at the library, the Brookfield Library. And in your packet is the resulting, there's a very long report. It kind of summarizes the entire process from all the exercises and steps that we went through. Also included is a executive summary of about 5 pages that really just boils down the top prioritized goals in various categories. And if the board, the purpose of tonight's discussion is to have the board comment on any of those components of the report. And if you want to revise or edit them, now's the time to do it. And once we're finalized with it, maybe on your next agenda, we'll have a resolution for the board to formally adopt those as the new 3-year plan for the village organization. Stevie, do you have anything else you want to?
Thank you. Stevie, thank you for coming out. I know you've been here all night in the back, so
TV right now?
we just wanted to get you out here and get you some air, so.
Right there, yeah.
Okay. This was a process that we engaged in. I think it was we had a couple of very productive meetings at the library about this, and a lot of great input and strategy. I think it was, I think it was very helpful in many ways, and I think it was great to get out of this room and get somewhere else and do it. I think things kind of flowed pretty freely out there, and we came up with a lot of good ideas in some of the exercises. So this is the result. This is the summary from it, and staff is looking for any comments, changes, suggestions, amendments. Anything changed?
I don't have any changes necessarily, but I was curious on reminding me of the next steps. Like, is then an implementation plan of how would we move forward on more specific actions related to these, like the top 4 short-term routine goals that are laid out here? then there'd be some strategies on how those would be achieved and a timeline put to those if we all agreed to these?
Right, so what's provided in the reports are the goals and objectives. It's up to village staff to work with the board to deliver the implementation. So we would prioritize short-term for 2024, starting soon after adoption, and meet regularly with staff to ensure that we're moving towards completing the goals that have been identified.
We'll report back, because we did with the last plan. Periodically, I'll schedule these for committee of the holes and present to you how we feel, how I feel we've met these various goals, and you can yell at me or say great job or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do.
I have a thought about the environmental ones, as you might imagine. I just noticed, that one is kind of a broad one, add an environmental lens to decisions. And so it's kind of a big statement. And how do we determine what that lens looks like and how focused of a lens as we're looking at things. And then underneath it says an energy audit of municipal facilities. So there's kind of a specific line item, but then kind of something more broad. So I'd love to work on kind of what that looks like with the Conservation Commission.
Right.
And I mean, that could even be reflected in some of the committee memos for items, how this advances or addresses, the various goals that we have. I mean, I think we've done that well in the past where, the committee items or memos, it references, part of our other previous plans referring back to how this moves us towards a goal or how it addresses a goal like that. You said that, the short term is things throughout 2024. What is the more longer term picture for some of the long-term goals on here? Is the timeline on that?
Sure. NIU categorized the goals identified by the board into short-term routine, short-term complex, long-term routine, and long-term complex. Within the report, it kind of defines what that means and gives a timeline with each. An example being short-term routine, 1 to 3 years. So those are items that we have accessible resources to accomplish and can work towards budgeted items. You'll see that some of the budgeted items for 2024 align with short-term routine goals that have been identified in this plan so that we can prepare to get those accomplished. So we'll work within each of those categories to ensure we're making steps towards completion within short-term or laying the foundation for more complex long-term goals.
I think this was a really helpful and productive process, and I'm glad that we were able to go through it.
I have a quick question about the community center, the feasibility study. I know it's on as a lower priority on some of the short-term complex, long-term complex, and maybe I'm missing it, but is the feasibility study still on here? Is that still in process?
It is still in process. We will have a committee of the whole item coming up either in December or January to report on that and, just give the public and the board some idea on where our next steps are. There was a staffing transition this year, which elongated that timeline initially identified. It is still moving forward, but we're doing a regroup now to identify a timeline where we can really focus and highlight on the important piece of community engagement and come up with a better identified plan.
Okay, I just didn't see it in here. Am I missing it? And would that be a short-term, under short-term routine?
It was identified. You guys did want that to keep moving and have it be a focus. It was more long-term as far as, for anything to come to fruition. The first step in short-term routine would be the feasibility.
Okay. I was just also curious how this plan informs the budget process. Did it inform the budget process? I'm just wondering timing-wise, does the 2024 budget reflect this? It seems like it does for the most part.
There are some items, an example being communications, that was identified as a high priority in the goal ranking process. So that is one that you'll see a direct correlation in the 2024 budget. Improved communications being identified as a prioritized high-ranking goal, and us budgeting towards a full-time communications position will help us accomplish that goal. You'll see other goals that don't have a direct connection, but it'll help to, navigate the budget process if there are items that we can budget towards in either steps toward achieving a goal or accomplishing it fully.
It's a good question, and it did, this is the first year of a 3-year budget, so next year we will include it more. And as part of the GFOA budget application that Doug sends in to hopefully apply and to get the budget award, we incorporate, we'll probably incorporate the executive summary part of this into the budget document that you all will receive for the next meeting at the board meeting and get submitted as part of the budget award. So it does form, this year we got it kind of late in the budget process.
Yes.
We sat through the meeting, so we knew somewhat of where it was going, but now the report will become incorporated in the next subsequent 2 years of budgets.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? So, what's the action necessary here by the board? We had to take a resolution to adopt it.
We'll do that on your next agenda.
Okay. So there'll be a resolution asking the village board to formally adopt the strategic plan that we worked on. So we'll put that up on the December 11th meeting. And again, this was another process that took a lot of time and work of staff and our consultants and, the board. We had 2 very long meetings on this during it was in the summer, I think, in May. Long evenings, but again, necessary and very productive. So thank you to the board for engaging in that process outside of our regular board meetings. But I think you all agree it was very productive. So, okay, thank you. The last item is a discussion of an ordinance regarding the Illinois Paid Leave for All Workers Act. Again, we have a very detailed memo from Brad Mitchell, our Human Resources Manager, explaining the situation. Brad, thank you for the memo. But again, if you'd like to provide a summary maybe for the members of the public and the audience, and we'll see if the board has any questions or comments. And I know Adam Durkin, our village attorney, was involved in this also. So thanks, Brad.
Thank you. As it says in the memo, the Paid Leave for All Workers Act will take effect on January 1st. This requires us, municipalities, to provide employees with 1 hour of paid leave per 40 hours that they work, and that's up to a minimum of 40 hours in a 12-month period. And they can take this leave without any question at any time. It's really open. Just as a background, the village here, we do provide paid leave to our full-time employees, but we do not provide paid leave to our part-time or seasonal employees. The act does not specify between that. So, as you can see, there's some concerns with that, which got IML's attention. They went out to try to exempt municipalities from the act. Those efforts didn't go anywhere, at least at this time. Therefore, the act is going to take place on January 1st with municipalities having to comply. So then after that, they looked at options and guidance that they could provide members of IML. And one of those options is to exclude municipalities based on Section 15P in the Act. That section basically states that if there's an ordinance, a municipal ordinance that states that we're providing that paid leave to employees, then we'd be excluded from the act. So based on that interpretation and guidance from Attorney Durkin, we have drafted the ordinance that you see in the packet. And if the board were to pass that ordinance, it would be the interpretation that we'd be excluded from the act, and we wouldn't need to take any further action at this time. There are multiple municipalities out there that are going to pass a similar ordinance and take the similar action. Now, I did put in there is a risk that, if it's challenged in the future, we may, have to look at providing paid leave to our part-time seasonal employees, but we would address that at that time. I don't know if the board has any questions. I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Brad, for the memo and the presentation. And I know the board's been paying attention to this, and the IML's been, updating us through our emails and things about efforts related to this. I mean, again, it's a, the Paid Leave for All Workers Act is a very popular name to put on a bill and pass it. And, but again, I submit this falls under another unfunded mandate from the state. They're telling not just private employers, but municipal employers what benefits they have to give to their employees without explaining how to pay for it. And you can imagine what the financial impact of this, especially on smaller organizations like us, where, we value our employees. We try to provide a very attractive benefit package, and I think we're very compassionate in general as employers, but this is a very dangerous, in my opinion, unfunded mandate that's put out there, offering this benefit without basically any restrictions or limitations or explanation. So I think the recommendation from IML and that staff has drafted with the village attorney's guidance, I mean, we are providing leave benefits to our employees, to our full-time employees, which we believe are beneficial. But out of necessity, we do have some part-time employees and summer help and things that, if we were to include them at this point, it would obviously affect the budget discussion that we just had, because you always have to plan for the worst. If every employee took all the allowed leave and all the seasonal employees, I mean, the seasonal employees are only here, some of them for the summer, and if they're taking, leave without explanation during that period of time, would obviously affect operations and require other things. So, Adam, is there anything you wanted to add, or before I open it up to the board? Or
I think President Garvey and Brad explained it well. This is an act that every municipality is dealing with. We cannot afford to lose certain services without any restriction: police, fire, public works, inspectors, you name it. So as Brad said, this was not just IML's input, but attorneys that work for IML that provided guidance, along with my firm and many other municipal attorneys, have all come to this consensus. So it is something we feel comfortable with. The law provides that if you are an employer governed by municipal ordinance where you provide paid leave, you will not be subject to the act so long as that ordinance is in effect on January 1st, 2024. This act will not address other employers in the village of Brookfield, your private employers. This is only for the village's employees. And this ordinance is, like Brad said, an ordinance that will probably be passed in a lot of jurisdictions. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
And I know the IML, there was a bill proposed in the veto session to delay implementation of this maybe until mid-year, the first quarter, or mid-year, to give municipalities the chance to deal with it in terms of budgetary constraints and everything. But that bill was proposed in the veto session and never got out of committee or never got anywhere. We were hoping that they would at least consider delaying implementation so to allow us more time to plan for it or deal with it. But the state was not, once again, was not responsive to the requests of local government. So questions or comments from the board?
I have several, actually. How many part-times and seasonals do we have?
We have about 115. It kind of varies depending on.
Okay, but that's during different seasons. I mean,
Correct.
So I was read through the actual bill, and then I was going through the FAQ pages, et cetera, and trying to learn as much as I could. And Adam, you brought up an interesting point. You said, about fire and police, but from my understanding, that anybody under union contract or any kind of that we work out, I can't even think of the terminology, but when we work out a contract with unions, that covers, and if the contract already covers that, then they wouldn't fall into this situation.
Until their successor agreement is negotiated. So if you have a valid collective bargaining agreement, which we do with our fire and our public works, that collective bargaining agreement controls until the expiration of that collective bargaining agreement after 2024. Once that collective bargaining agreement expires and you bargain a successor agreement, which we are doing with our police union, the act is in effect unless you bargain in an express waiver into the collective bargaining agreement.
But aren't we offering them better than 1 hour every 40 hours?
The answer is yes. Your,
already
the far
offering
majority
something
of your full-time employees get more time off than 40 hours per year. But this act does not just provide 40 hours, it's 40 hours of demand time. They can take it for whatever reason, whenever they want, regardless of how many other people are off. So imagine, if you will, a doomsday scenario where everyone in one department, it doesn't have to be at this village, you could think of your police, fire, public works, anywhere. They all decide, we want to take the week of Super Bowl off. You would have, in essence, no employees in that department working. You could have no employees in the village if everyone decides to take it off. at
So
once.
that's the real dilemma here. It's not necessarily cost associated, because the cost-wise, if we're we already offer a better time, vacation accruement. We already offer a better accruement option for our full-time and our union employees, et cetera, and we would only be adding on cost-wise a max of 40 hours, right? Because that's what this comes out to, 40 hours a year. We would be offering that to part-time and seasonal employees. But the reality is what we're arguing then is more or less having the whole police force call off on one, after the next collective bargaining agreement, calling off on a week when we're having an issue going on. That's
Yes.
what we're discussing.
I think that's a very important provision of the act that most employers are concerned about. Is it's not so much the financial impact of 40 additional hours, it's the how the employees could use this time. Every employer that I work for has restrictions on how many employees could be off in a department on vacation. They account sick leave into it. This act says an employee, a group of employees could use it on demand for whatever reason, for no reason, and you can't deny it.
Right. Understood. So, I mean, because when it comes down to the actual hours of recruitment, I believe that seasonal, and I don't see a reason why they can't accrue hours. It's not like they're going to accrue 40 hours in the month of December, but they might accrue 1 hour. But I think the law said 2 hour minimum increments or something like that. But we could change it to 4 hours depending on our own policy. So we can say they have to do it in 4 hour increments instead of 2 hour increments for what they're taking. Am I correct in that?
You could create a policy, either front-loading it, or they get 1 hour for every 40 hours worked. The 2 hour increment you're talking about is the minimum that you could require them to take. You can't say you have to take full day increments. The most you could say they have to take is 2 hour increments.
So you could, I think that was an option though, that we could mandate it'd be a 4 hour increment as opposed to just the 2, isn't it?
No, the least greatest increment you can make somebody take it is 2 hours. If people were actually addressing this act, they would probably mandate employees take this leave in the maximum 2 hour increments, as opposed to employees getting to take 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes. But the highest we can make that minimum usage is the 2 hours.
I must have read that wrong, because I thought there was an option that if we already had a standard policy that stated something to that effect. But, so, I'm in favor of, because of just the item of having the fear of having the whole police force or having all of the village staff calling off on a whole week basis kind of thing, that I understand. But at the same time, I don't see why we could not offer something for part-time employees to get paid time off, which I'm totally in favor of doing. I don't want to withdraw all of the options off the table. I understand that the discussion here is to pull out of this particular item. I understand that. But if we pull out of it, just saying we're going to pull out of it is one thing. But if we pull out of it, then we should offer up, I believe, a better policy that's befitting to our municipality. So if we're going to do this, then I still think that we should offer something to our part-time and seasonal employees to earn that time off. I don't think it's that big of a financial, maybe it is going to be a big financial impact, but at the same time, I just think it's right for the workers to have paid time off. Because some people, I mean, I'm not saying our municipality does this, but when you fall in line with some of these other companies, like a healthcare company, where they'll have a nurse or a radiologist work 35 hours as opposed to 38, just so they can get out of paying them benefits. So I think I'm in favor of backing out of this one, opting out of this, but I think that we need to add in the ability to accrue hours for part-time and seasonal.
What is the current policy on that, village policy for part-time and seasonal employees? Do you know it?
Our policy?
Yeah, for leave
So we
accrual.
don't offer
There is
any
none.
time for them.
And that's what I would like to change. But we already offer a better accruement for our full-time and our union employees, better than what's optioned in here.
Correct.
But our part-time.
And because this
seasonal-
because this kind of just came up and we're under the gun with the January 1st implementation, that's why this had to be up tonight so we could deal with it before the end of the year. It would have, I guess, during the budget, it would have been it would have been helpful to, I guess, to discuss the financial impact of offering some type of paid leave to part-time employees. It's something we haven't done, as Trustee Cote has pointed out. We've never done that. We've done it for the full-time employees. So that shift in policy and shift in change should be addressed in, a budget format or budget talk. So, and maybe we could do that going forward, but we have to deal with, opting out and creating this policy to prevent the January 1st implementation of the strict requirements of the Paid for All Workers Act. I mean, I'll, open it up to the rest of the board about general comment if we want to immediately expand this to part-time and seasonal employees, or, see discussion on it going forward. And again, there's always the possibility, as the memo indicates, that there could be challenges to this that would require us to also address the part-time employees, so we could see that going forward. So what's the board's thoughts or pleasure on that?
I've got some more questions, actually.
Sure. And I'm sorry, I cut off, I wasn't sure if Trustee Cote was done. I kind of
No, please
interjected.
go ahead with Trustee Hendricks'
Okay,
comment.
thank you.
You said we had 115 part-time and seasonal. How many of those are part-time?
I'd have to take a
Is
look.
it majority or?
You mean that's total village employees, including full-time and.
No, our full-time total is 93, so that's in addition to.
So those are the camp counselors?
All of
and-
Camp
these employees
counselors,
that he's
crossing
talking about
guards.
are part-time or seasonal people.
Part-time versus seasonal, though, I'm trying to understand.
What's the
The
differentiation?
breakdown.
I'd have to take a look at that and get.
Are the
you on the-
seasonal,
the
I mean,
exact
other than the
breakdown of
public
that.
works
I mean, our
employees,
seasonal-
are the public works employees, the seasonal employees that we hire, are there anything else? If anyone's aware, are those what's characterized as seasonal? Every summer, we hire 3 or 4 college students to work, day shifts and weekend shifts. Is there any,
Those are seasonals.
okay, is there any other one that qualify, any other positions that qualify as seasonal, or are they all part-time then? Like, because I'm thinking the majority of them are the summer camp.
Summer camp would be seasonal.
Those are considered seasonal?
Seasonal.
Okay.
So what would be considered part-time but not union?
So like we have I think Roger, our
CSO.
plumbing. Roger is one of them.
One of our inspectors, the electrical.
Crossing guards.
Okay. And so how does this, to Ed's point, if the point is to make sure that it's not on demand and everybody takes off all at the same time, how does this regulate that?
The act provides that if you pass by a municipal ordinance, an adoption, paid time off, not mimicking the act, but any kind of paid time off for your employees, you are not going to be subject to this act. So by adopting something by ordinance now, this act will never touch the village of Brookfield. So there will be no demand time of 40 hours available to the employees if they seek it after January 1st. The provision of this ordinance, it will amend your village code to say that the village of Brookfield shall provide at least 5 paid days off to full-time employees pursuant to the village personnel manual or collective bargaining agreement or other employment contract. So this ordinance really just says the village is going to continue to follow its collective bargaining agreements or the current personnel manual. You could change the personnel manual and the collective bargaining agreements in the future, but the code, the village code will not change, saying we have to provide at least 5 paid days to full-time employees.
Okay, so then it would be the personnel manual that says everybody can't take off the same day, it has to be approved, or it has to be a sick day, or some other thing like that.
Or the union contract.
Or a union contract, of course. So I have a big problem with part-time employees being excluded from this. As a working mom who is a part-time employee myself, I think if an employee has standard hours, giving them sick time or paid time off,
Exactly.
that shows that their contribution and their employment is valued. If they're working every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and for some reason they have to take off 2 hours on the Friday for a doctor's appointment, they should be paid for that if they're a regular employee. I just think it's right, whether or not we have any employees on the books who are fitting into that category. I think it would be wrong to exclude part-time employees.
Exactly.
And we can, it can still be prorated, but someone who's working 30 hours all year round and has been there for 5 years should be getting time off.
Yeah,
And it should be paid.
I'm in agreement with you, and I think if there are some thresholds that we can put into place to that point, so if you're working over 25 hours, or you're working over 30 hours, then here's how many, days that you get. And like you said, on a regular schedule, not necessarily your seasonal, camp counselors, but someone who is in a regular, position, professional position. I think that's a reasonable expectation.
I agree with that too. I'd love to see what the budget, how that would impact the budget for 2024, if it's something we need to plan for 2025. But I still think we have to agree with this act to get out of the on-demand piece. And what both of you are talking about is additional policy that Brookfield would have to make about part-time time off.
As long as this doesn't exclude us from compensating our part-time employees in that way.
It doesn't. You always have the ability to change your personnel policy, regardless of this ordinance, to provide for paid time off for a different group of employees or revise your paid leave provisions for your current employees that receive paid time off.
Understood.
So that would give staff time to address, if the board wanted to address this ordinance, proposed ordinance in front of us prior to January 1st, and then give staff direction to bring back a budget analysis and a committee of the whole item so we could discuss. I've heard that there should be maybe a possible threshold of, if they're 30 hours a week versus camp counselors and things. These are details that need to be worked out. And again, the village board should know what the potential financial impact of it is based on the budget that we just passed, so. We have to assume, bless you, we have to budget for the potential of full benefits as we do with the full employees, paid leave. So let's figure out the financial impact and let the board committee it and discuss, who's included among maybe the breakdown of who's part-time, who's seasonal, what it's considered, how many hours is a threshold the board wants to deal with, and what, is it just a prorated benefit, or is it a different benefit? And then know what the financial impact, and then the board could give staff direction from there. Is that acceptable for now? Any other than the issue on the, part-time and seasonal employees being excluded, which at this point they would, is there any other concerns about the village board adopting this ordinance at the December 11th meeting?
No.
And then early next year, can we, start the analysis now in terms of the question, obviously, you hear the questions the board has, whose employees are, what's considered part-time, what's considered seasonal, how many hours, that type of thing. And we can see how it's treated in other municipalities and give us, the various potential budget impacts and how we'd pay for it.
And can I just add one last thing?
Absolutely.
I think not just based on hours, you have to look at the position itself.
Yes.
What's the value to the organization? Is it ongoing? Is it, right? What's the impact? And, right, that would be a key consideration for me.
Well, I think that's something the board's going to have to discuss, that, because I'd like to say that every position we have has some value to the organization. I understand what you're trying to say. That,
What I mean is if it's like a property inspector, and that's not a full-time role for us, or like a clerk role that. those
Well, we
need to
just
be-
created a, in the budget, and proposed budget, we created a part-time inspector position, but I'm not sure where I'm not sure what the point is there if, I guess, maybe it's just the wording of distinguish between, value to the organization or things like that. It's, if we want to get it, that's probably why we're going to take a committee of the whole. I think the most productive thing would be to get a list of all the potential positions and schedules and hours, basic schedule hours, when they work and how many hours they typically work. And then the board can maybe, and, the potential financial impact, and with some recommendation from staff that we always get, the board can kind of go through and decide, what, if any, benefits we want to offer, which positions. Does that make sense? Okay. Anything else on this? All right, that ends the items we have up for discussion under regular business. I'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone on this side that has any public comment? Anyone on this side? Okay, hearing no public comment, is there any need for executive session?
Nope.
Okay, there being no further business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting at 8:17 PM.
So moved.
Second.
The motion was made by trustee Cote, second by trustee Kaluzny. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ketchmark?
Aye.
Trustee Cote?
Aye.
Trustee Hendricks?
Aye.
Trustee Nurematsu?
Aye.
Did she answer?
She did answer aye.
Okay, trustee Gilhuli?
Aye.
Trustee Kaluzny?
Aye.
Motion passes.
You did vote aye, right? You don't want to stay? No, she did vote yes. We never had that problem, Kathy.
Nice.